Five, four, three, two, one. We have ignition. Strap in. You're about to listen to the hottest sounds.
Dream Catcher Radio.
Hello everyone, hello, welcome back to my show Beyond the Cover with me on Andreia on Dreamcatcher Radio. And today we have another interview, like with on my first interview with Tarikitu. Today we have a British author, another one, which is George Rice. George Rice is a British author, originally from Gloucester, but currently lives in 22 Carisbury, a beautiful market town and civil parish in north of Gloucestershire, England. And today we're going to focusing more on short stories. And I said this because Josh have published a horror story Until We Met in August in a magazine called All Your Stories. I've personally been very grateful to ever read this story. And I can say from my perspective, this is a story about a man called Ronnie who is processing the loss of his wife, Nee. It's a beautiful story about processing grief and having good memories of the loved ones, while at the same time is waiting for until the day he sees his wife again. And the second one he has published on TikTok. That's right, he's a TikTok user. And the short story is called High Rise Long Fall. This one is a very peculiar one because it's a short about a man called Charlie, a window cleaner, who is escaping a world of zombies. Yeah, this time, so if you guys can see, we just started from grief and loss and now zombies. Absolutely fantastic. The story is written in first person perspective, adding the horror of being chased by these creatures. But also has this hint of comedy as the character tries to process everything happening around them. And Josh shares this with readers too. Hopefully in the future, he gets it into his writing. And now here's the interesting part today. Very recently, Josh have been working on a horror novel called The Things We Do. And is in the process of writing a querying letter for an agent. What a fantastic and beautiful thing, which we'll discuss today. And now, before we start an interview, I will ask Josh, would you like to add anything in particular today, or you are good?
Just to say thank you very much for having me. Really looking forward to joining, talking through, like you said, the short story process, creative process in general. Really looking forward to diving into that with you, Andrea. Thank you again.
You're welcome. And before we start an interview, could you just please read one of the parts of your writing for people to have an idea what to expect?
Yeah, of course. So I picked an excerpt from The Things We Do. I timed it at about 2 minutes, but I'll try and be as quick as possible reading through this, okay?
Yeah.
My chest tightens as I face the sympathetic crowd. A dry lump forms in my throat, choking me. It feels like only days have passed since I stood in the same spot for Mum, racking my brain for the right thing to say. Writing a speech for Dad was close to impossible. Every word too similar to what I said for Mum. I can't do what I say to my wife, Violet. I can't read another eulogy. Yes, you can, she replies, kissing me on the forehead, the kiss strengthening my resolve. Violet takes her seat and waves from the front row of pews, overhead lighting glistening against the tears running down her cheek. The tightness in my chest eases, if only a little, as we lock eyes. Our son Sam leans his head on her shoulder. Seeing him hold back tears racks me with guilt. I should have ignored Dad, called an ambulance, forced him to get better. That's the thing about life. When you decide you've had enough, the only one who can change your mind is you. Violet and Sam watch me with matching coffee-coloured eyes, looking to me to say the right words in the right order. I open my mouth to speak, but no words come out. I've read my printed speech over and over this week to the point where I see the words anytime I close my eyes, yet now they refuse to come. Tear-filled eyes in the crowd find me. They smile, some nod encouragingly. Taking a sip of water, I see how bad my hands are shaking and ball my fists. Let's give this a go, shall we? I say quietly, muted laughs finding me from the front row. And I will pause there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, Josh. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now let's start the interview for real. Tell us a little bit about your process, your writing process as a writer.
Of course. So to go a step further back, so I actually started writing relatively late. So I'm early into my 30s, but my love of reading and writing came kind of into my mid 20s. I grew up as more of a sporty kid. You know, I was a football kid, always out, covered in mud, that sort of thing. But then things like Harry Potter started getting popular, and I grew up with Goosebumps and those kind of things. So I read little bits, but then as I got into my 20s, I found fantasy novels. I started getting into Stephen King, started really getting into reading as a constant hobby. And then towards my mid to late 20s, I was like, well, I'm really enjoying this. Why don't I give it a go myself? So I started writing a novel. It was called Gifted, and I was really happy with it. It was kind of akin to The Boys, kind of a emotional superhero kind of tale. And I sent it to a few authors, and of course, they all said no because it was my first novel, and a few agents. And whilst I got some positive feedback, they were like, it's not for us. But I kind of got the bug from there, and I've carried on writing and carried on writing. Took the odd gap here and there, and then as of this year, I started really focusing on short stories, which I know we're going to touch on more. And I've also just finished a novel called The Things We Do, which, as you mentioned, I'm querying as of tomorrow. I have my querying package ready to send, and I have a list of about 70 agents that I'll be contacting to hopefully try and get that one sold.
Just by a bit of curiosity, did you start reading at a young age?
So I read occasionally as a young reader, but I wasn't a devoted reader. So, like I said, I read the odd Goosebumps book, I read the odd bit of Harry Potter, but I was probably one or two books a year up until my 20s. And then in my 20s was when I really got into reading 10, 20, 30 books a year. I think this year I'm on 50 something books at this point. So I've kind of just carried on building up and up over the years as it's gone on. But yeah, I've grown into reading. I didn't grow up the biggest writer, no.
All
Biggest
right.
reader, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So now, just a bit of curiosity as well, because we all writers have our own process, as you
Yep.
explained right now.
Yep.
So, what comes to you first when you're writing your stories? Is the plot of the characters or something else, and why?
Characters, always characters. So my favorite thing to write about when it comes to writing books and stories is characters and emotions. So you touched on it with my short stories. So the short story that I had published was really a story about grief, about love, about being, left behind when your other half has passed. And even with the horror story, High Rise Long Fall, that I give out to kind of readers and people that engage with me on TikTok, whilst it's a horror story, there are big parts of it as well that are that fear of this is the end. Have I accomplished anything? What have I done with my life? Was it worth it? So I typically start with a character. I usually have a scene in mind. That kind of brainwave, that initial spark, is usually a scene of my character doing something or something happening to my character, and I flesh it out from there. It can be the end of the story, the middle of the story, it's a character that comes to me first, and a feeling and an emotion, and then I flesh it out.
Yeah, that's a very interesting to start the story because yeah, when you're starting with your characters, you agree that you have to know them personally, like your best
Absolutely.
friend.
Yep.
Just to have an idea. Of course, we're going to discuss more, Ashley, as we're going to question right now, because you mentioned in your TikTok videos that you consider yourself as a temple author. I
Yep.
never heard that term before, and I was very curious. So could you please explain what that means?
Of course, if it helps, it's new to me as well. It wasn't something I heard until a week or two ago, hence why I filmed a video about it. So typically with writers, most writers fall into plotter or pantser. So plotter being the ones who plan their novel from A to B, they know every beat and every step they're trying to hit. Pantser being someone who feels their way through. The way to define a tentpole writer is they will have key points in the book. So for me, I will know what I want to happen around 10%, around 30%, around 50%. So I know my key scenes, but I don't necessarily know everything that is going to bridge those scenes. So I will know my ending, I will know my middle, I will know the key bits, the key revelations, but I don't know how I'm going to get between those. So that's what's kind of defined. Imagine a tent where you've got pegs occasionally. It's that kind of thing. Yeah.
That's a very interesting way to explain because, yes, I agree that being an architect and a
Mhm.
pantser might be two extremes,
Yep.
but then that term comes to the middle, doesn't
In
it?
the
Because it
middle,
combines
exactly. Yeah.
both.
Yep.
And
Yep.
sometimes, because, yeah, with the writers we never heard, there's middle ground. So I think it's very interesting to come out and say, hey, I'm actually
Yep.
kind of in the middle ground. Sometimes
Yep.
I have to sometimes to write things down, but then I also don't know how they go.
Feel
And I
my way
think that
through.
there's a good process as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So, because I imagine that you have sent your work out and people are reading your stories as well, can you just say how do you process and deal with negative reviews and criticism?
Yeah, so I think I'm coming at this in a slightly unique position. So as I mentioned, I wrote my first book years ago, sent it to agents, and it was all no's, it was all rejections. It was around 50 agents coming back and saying no. So I kind of started my writing career with rejections. So I was exposed to it quite early. In a sense now, when it comes to short stories and things, I think any creative endeavor, I think you have to accept that it's not going to be for everyone, especially when you write something like horror. Horror is quite an emotive thing. You are intending to scare, to creep out, to give that kind of shiver down the spine. That's not for everyone. So I think you have to go into it accepting that regardless of how good your stories are or your writing is, it's not going to be for everyone. You can't please everyone. If you think about the main authors in horror, if we think about Stephen King, my wife, for instance, does not like his stories. So even someone like Stephen King, who is considered top of his game, does not get great feedback from everyone. So I think you have to accept that going into it. You have to go into it knowing that you're not going to tick everyone's boxes. But I think trying where possible to take constructive criticism is really helpful as well. If someone comes to you and they say, I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy the way you did that character, or the ending was really rushed, you can take positives from that too. And I think that's the way to try and approach it.
Yeah, I think there's a very good point you just pointed out. Absolutely. And now let's make a little bit of pause. And could you please just explain your first song?
Yes. So my first song, let me remind myself of the list that I sent you. So my first song is a song by Lady Gaga. It's called Is That All Right from the movie A Star Is Born. And this was the first dance song for my wife and I during our wedding. So a really passionate song and an emotional song for me. Yeah.
Oh, bless you. Then, guys, do enjoy. Got Lady Gaga.
Life is so simple. A little boy, a little girl, laughing and loving, trying to figure out the world. It felt like summer when I kissed you in the rain. And I know your story, but tell me again. Nothing you say wouldn't interest me. All of your words are like poems to me. I would be honored if you would take me as I am. I want you to look right in my eyes, to tell me you love me, to be by my side. I want you at the end of my life. I wanna see your face, wanna fall with grace at the moment I die. Is that alright? Is that alright? I hope you're still with me when I'm not quite myself. And I pray that you'll lift me when you know I need help. It's a warm celebration of all of our years. I dream of our story, of our fairy tale. Family dinners and family trees, teaching the kids to say thank you and please, knowing if we stay together that things will be right. I want you to look right in my eyes, to tell me you love me, to be by my side. I want you at the end of my life. Wanna see your face,
And that's it, guy. I really hope you join Lady Gaga today with Josh. And what a wonderful thing, to actually have a song that is basically on a wedding of all our celebrations and wedding. What a beautiful song. I really hope you guys enjoyed. And now let's continue our interview because I think it's very interesting and you're kind of really building, this process and people understanding how it's like and how writers are very different. And I always say to my audience, you have to know yourself for the things to start to work with you. So what do you say with this, Josh?
I completely agree. I think every author puts elements of themselves into their characters. And I think you have to do that because it's the best way to get to know the characters, or to flip that, people around you that you know really well. So when I think about it, and I think we were going to touch on it anyway. So I think about Marcus, the main character from my current novel, The Things We Do. There's a lot of me in Marcus, but what I tried to do was make him make the opposite choice to what I would make. So he's a character who is quite similar to me. He's a family man. He works a 9 to 5, that kind of thing. But he makes a lot of decisions that are the opposite of what I would make. And that was an intentional choice, both to kind of explore that part of me, but also to make him interesting as a character and someone who you might expect to go left, but he actually chooses to go right. But I completely agree. I think even without realizing, you put parts of yourself into your characters and your stories every time. Yeah,
I think this is a part of subconscious writers
for
we do
sure, for sure.
without
Yeah,
without apology, without
yep,
apologies. I think.
yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because you touched on being emotional on your horror stories, when you're writing an emotional or difficult scene, how do you set the mood?
Music plays a big part. I think it does for a lot of people. I'm a big fan of a kind of spooky lo-fi YouTube playlist. If I'm writing something, I want that kind of ambience or ambient music. If I'm writing quite a deep emotional scene, I do have playlists of songs that I will play to really try and get me in the mood. I try not to read books that are similar to books that I'm writing at the time because I find it impacts and it leans my writing too much. I don't want to kind of base it or write something similar. So I lean a lot on music. And one of my favorite things to do is go for a walk. So when I'm writing, if I'm approaching a big scene, a lot of the time I'll try and take myself for a quick walk around the block, really put myself in my character's shoes, think emotionally of how this next big scene that we're writing out, whether it's a death scene, it could be something really big and impactful, how that would make me feel at the time.
Yes, because I also have said this to my listeners that I think when we are too exhausted, because sometimes being time and time we can get
Yep,
exhausted, it's just to get off of our computers and then just,
absolutely.
like you said, have a walk.
Yep,
But
absolutely.
we can still think about the
Yeah,
characters and the stories.
I would argue walking is one of the most positive things any author can do because if you're doing it and you're contemplating your story and your characters and your choices, I've had my best ideas whilst I'm walking through a muddy field, not while I'm sitting at my computer and actually thinking about it. I think the more we intentionally think what comes next, the harder it is for what comes next to actually come to you. So yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, so now the next question I want to ask is, who has been the biggest supporter of your writing?
Uh, Without doubt, my wife. My wife is cursed to read first drafts for an eternity. Um,
Let's
yeah, absolutely blessed. So we have a really great. So I've been with my wife for 14, going on 15 years. So a long, long time. So we know each other very well. We have an agreement creatively where when she reads my stories, I need her to rip them apart. As much as it's nice for people to say, I love it, it's great, when you're putting your work out there, you need honest feedback, right? If my wife tells me it's great and then everyone else tells me it's terrible, that doesn't help me. So we have an agreement where she will effectively rip my stories apart. So she spent a while going through my first draft of The Things We Do and sentence by sentence just pulling it apart. Would this character really do this? Would they really do that? So she will always be the one that supports me the most and also the one that I get the most out of from where she reads my stories in their kind of rawest form. With Until We Meet, the story about grief that you read, we actually went for a walk through our local cemetery to really try and help me get in the mindset of what it would be like to sit in that position where the main character is. So she's been really supportive of me. She joins me on a lot of those kind of tales and a lot of those walks.
No, that's absolutely interesting as you say because yeah, she's someone of your family, but she also
Yep,
can give you constructive feedback, and I think
yep,
that's very important for a writer as well.
absolutely. Yep,
When I'm giving constructive feedback to somebody,
Yep.
I try to say what does it work and what is working, because I think it
Yep.
creates the balance as well of
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think telling a writer they are perfect helps them in any way, shape, or form. Even if you think a story is great, there will always be things that could be improved, whether it's the tightness of sentences, whether it's overusing words, whether it's really fleshing out a B character more. And I think those, even if it is just small constructive bits of feedback like that, they all improve the story. So, like you said, I think having constructive, open, honest feedback is an absolute gift to writers for sure.
Yes, I was touching on on the constructive feedback. Who do you trust for objective and constructive unconstructive criticism of your work?
Yes. So I have a small group of author friends, not a lot. It's actually why I joined TikTok in the first place because I wanted to interact with more kind of like-minded people. So even at the moment, the things we do, the novel that I'm querying, is with a group of friends that are going through it and they're giving me feedback. So you need you need feedback. Every writer needs feedback. I also worked with an editor, which was really great as well, an editor, E.R. Vickers, who works a lot in horror books. So she was really great. She went through it and gave me a lot of feedback before it got to friends. So my kind of process has gone my wife reading it, me rewriting it, my editor reading it, me rewriting it, and then it's gone to friends, and now it's going out to agents. So yeah, you do need a group of people around you for sure.
Yes, because it really gives the writer a sense of community, but also the help that they need before the whole
Absolutely.
process,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, and you need to
Oh,
return that favor as well. Obviously, if you have author friends that are reading your work, you need to be able to do the same for them. And again, keep it constructive.
yeah, so now the now we're going to start, I think is a good time to ask the questions what people are waiting for.
Mhm.
It's going to be like, from your experience that you have participated in a magazine,
Yeah,
could you discuss the process of that application?
yeah, of course. So, writing short stories and applying to magazines is something I would recommend to any authors that plan on putting their work out there. It's kind of a mini version of the querying process when it comes to sending a full novel to agents. So, most magazines, and I have a tab window of them open of ones that I constantly keep an eye on, they will put out a call for novels in a certain genre or under a certain theme. If we pick horror, for instance, we're getting into spooky season October now. A couple of months ago, there were plenty of magazines saying we want stories that focus on, let's call it pumpkin farms as an example, as a setting, or ghost spooky stories. And they'll tell you kind of word count that they're looking for, kind of genre, that sort of thing. It's your job then as the writer to obviously think of an idea, something unique that plays into that. The process of sending to magazines is a very simple one because, again, you are sending work that they have requested to them, and they will typically come back to you within a couple of weeks and either say yes or no. A lot of them sadly don't reply from where they get so many stories, and you can typically take that as a no, obviously. But when you get a yes, which was great because that was what I had with Until We Meet, you then go into that thing of copyright becomes a thing with short stories because you are effectively handing over copyright for a period of time to the magazine. So with Until We Meet, I think it was only a short term because they publish every 3 months. So whilst that magazine that I've been printed in will continually print, the copyright drifts back to me after so much time. So I can resubmit it to other magazines, etc. So you have to do your homework. Some will want to own it for years. Some will just effectively never own the copyright. But it's a very simple process of look into magazines. You can simply Google magazines that accept short stories. There is a list that I found through Penguin Random House, the publisher, and they give you a list of, I think it's about 50 different magazines. So you can kind of go through to see what ones match your genres. And then it's as simple as, do you have an idea and submit? So it's quite a simple process, luckily.
Yes, I actually have a question because this happened to me because I also participated online applications as well for
Yep.
short stories. Did you have by any chance to pay for them by any chance?
So there are some that you pay for, and I have paid for some. Yes, typically the bigger magazines you will pay for because they have a raft of editors. They are a more polished organization, shall we say. So there is typically it's never been much. I think the most I paid is about £11, which if it goes somewhere is great. If it doesn't, you do feel a bit like you've wasted money. My recommendation for newer authors is to look for smaller magazines, not because they are any less professional or because there is any negative to going through them, but because they tends to be less people applying for these smaller magazines because they're not as well known. So if you do your homework, and All Your Stories is a great example of that, they publish every 3 months. They have been doing so for years. So it's not a small organization by any means, but it's not one that is as well known as some of the bigger magazines. So smaller magazines is something I would highly recommend for new authors.
And that's a very good start, in my opinion. And we're going to just make a little bit of pause. And please, George, introduce your second song.
Thank you. So my next song is by my favorite band of all time, Linkin Park. I was lucky enough to go and see them in June in Wembley, and this is Waiting for the End, which is my favorite song by them.
I absolutely love that band as well. It was my first band when I started metal. So you guys enjoy.
Amazing.
Wishing I had strength to stand. This is not what I had planned. It's out of my control. Flying at the speed of light, thoughts were spinning in my head. So many things were left unsaid. It's hard to let you go. I know what it takes to move on. I know how it feels to lie. All I wanna do is trade this life for something new, holding on to what I haven't got. Sitting in an empty room, trying to forget the past. This was never meant to last. I wish it wasn't so. I know what it takes to move on. I know how it feels to lie. All I wanna do is trade this life for something new, holding on to what I haven't got. What was left when that fire was gone? I thought it felt right, but that right was wrong. All caught up in the eye of the storm, trying to figure out what it's like moving on. And I don't even know what kind of things I said. My mouth kept moving and my mind went dead. So picking up the pieces now, where to begin? The hardest part of ending is starting again. All I wanna do is trade this life for something new, holding on to what I haven't got. It's not the end, it's not the beginning. Just a voice like a riot, rocking every revision. But you listen to your tone to the violent rhythm. Words sound steady, so let me do dinner. We say yeah, with this flying up in the air, like we're holding on to something that's invisible there. 'Cause we're living at the mercy of the pain in the air. Until we get it, forget it, let it all disappear.
And that was it, guys. Linkin Park, as I said, was my first metal band that I have heard when I was a teenager. So I was very pleased to hear it again. Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much for bringing them up. Now let's just continue, but it's going to be more about the quitting agent. So my question will be, with your current book being drafted until you are satisfied, would you talk about the process of querying agents, please?
Absolutely. So a big thing to call out first is you need your book to be market ready, or as close to market ready as you believe it is. So you need to be confident that if it was put on a shelf tomorrow, it would be readable, it would be sellable. The process of querying agents is just a longer version of querying magazines for short stories. So you do have to do your homework with this. You can start by just Googling literary agencies in the UK, which is what I did. They will all have their agents listed on their websites, and most of their agents will say, I am looking for this book in this genre. Or some will be more vague and they will say, I am just looking for this genre, or I am looking for this feeling. I want it to emote this within me. So you've made a list. So using me as an example, I have a list of 70 agents that I will be contacting over, I'm going to stagger it. So I'm going to do probably over 3 or 4 weeks. Every agent will have an expectation of what they would like. It typically starts with a 1 page synopsis of the book, a brief overview in terms of a 1 word, or sorry, a 1 sentence pitch, 1 paragraph pitch, and it's typically the first 3 chapters or first 10,000 words of your book. So you have your package, you have your synopsis, your pitch, your kind of querying letter, your 1 page letter, and the opening section of your book. That is quite standardized across agents. So you can get all of that kind of in a folder somewhere where you can just copy and paste it and dump it into an email. The fun part starts after that, and that's the waiting. Most agents call out that they take anywhere up to 8 weeks to reply to you. So you are going to be in limbo for quite a while before you get any feedback. And that's assuming that you actually do get feedback, because a lot of them, if they've got 100 emails in their inbox, might not have the time to come back to you and say, I liked it, but it's not for me because of this. So you might get a bit of a copy and paste answer, or which does happen, you might just get ignored, because that was what I had a lot when I queried previously. So that's the process that I'm in at the moment. I'm prepared to be ignored. I am feeling confident. I'm really happy with the things we do as a novel, but you have to go into it expecting you're going to get a lot more no's than yes. If I get one agent who is really interested in the book, I will consider that a win out of the 70. So that's the kind of the lottery numbers that you're playing in. And also, if you write in horror, whilst horror is having a resurgence at the moment, it's definitely becoming a more and more popular genre. It's not necessarily as mainstream as romance or fantasy or those kind of ones. So I went through probably 300 agents looking through them to see if they matched what I was looking to sell to them. And out of that, I found 70. So that you can see already how the market is diluted and diluted. So it's an interesting process. The first time I did it, it was a really stressful process when I did Gifted, that which was the novel I queried previously, mostly because I wasn't ready. I'm coming at it now in my early 30s. I've written a few novels in between. I'm a lot more confident in my work. It's been through an editor, so I'm coming at it in a lot more of a kind of confident place now, which is, for me at least, a happier place to be.
Yeah, that's a very interesting process as you described, because we have to be prepared for a no, but it's
Yes,
more like to help us to be confident, I think.
absolutely.
Because the more of course, it's not meaning we should not be positive, we should be, but
Yep,
it's just an expectation because
absolutely.
they are just seeing thousands and thousands of scripts.
Yep.
And I will say as well, for us to not take it personally, even if they
Yes.
don't come back to
Yep.
us,
One of the
because
things, yeah, sorry, carry on.
what you were saying, please as
Thank
well.
you. No, I was just going to say you're completely right with expecting those. One of the things I think we as creatives need to go into this knowing, because we write these stories from a place of love. We've had this idea, we love this story, we love this character. You have to go into publishing, which is what we're trying to do by sending it to agents, understanding that it's a business. So, from a publisher's perspective, they are looking for books that they think will sell. It doesn't mean if you get a no that your book is bad. It maybe just means they don't think it's the right time, it's the right market, all of those kind of things. I know authors that have queried, had no's, and then have queried the same book a year later and they've had yeses. So, there's that market element of it that you have to go into it understanding as well. So for me, with the things we do, my plan is to query for roughly 6 months, see where I'm at, and then either consider a second raft of agents to query or start to look into indie publishing or self-publishing. So really take my time with it.
Yes, and it was about the curing engines and also about processing on the magazines. Now, let's say some questions just to take a bit of the interview, just
Yep.
to break a little bit of the thing, right? So I will say, would you and your main characters get along by any chance?
So I'm gonna go through a couple of the examples. So Ronnie in Until We Meet, I would absolutely love to sit down and have a cup of tea with. So Ronnie is the one who is grieving his dearly departed wife. Someone I would love to sit down and have a cup of tea with, just a genuine, nice older guy, absolutely. Charlie from High Rise Long Fall, we would absolutely get on. He would probably be a bit too sarcastic for me. He deals with the start of the zombie apocalypse in a way that I don't think I would. He's far too calm for me and far too kind of jokey. And then the main one being Marcus in the things we do, we would absolutely get on up until a point. So Marcus is a character that I based a lot on myself, as I mentioned. But again, a lot of the choices that he makes, I think as a friend, I would be there like, why are you doing that? You're making a very bad decision at this point. So I think I would get on with all of my characters up until a point, and that's probably a reflection of myself. Again, you put a lot of yourself in there. How much does anyone like themselves when you really deep dive and get into it?
I absolutely agree because when I was reading your short story of the zombie apocalypse, I was like, this is a very serious situation. How can be this
Yeah,
sarcastic?
yeah,
Come
yeah.
on.
But I think again that's an interesting thing to think about how we all deal with trauma. A lot of what I write is trauma in some shape or form. So we have Ronnie in Until We Meet, who is dealing with it by effectively waiting for the end. He's just waiting to see his wife again. Charlie in High Rise Long Fall, his way of dealing with it is to almost kind of make a joke out of the situation. The world is ending, and he is more worried about a woman who he is attracted to in the offices that he is cleaning, and those kind of things. He's not really comprehending the severity of what he's involved in. So yeah, how we deal with trauma again is a fun thing to write.
Yes, it's a very interesting because we have to do a lot of research as well of psychology as well as writers
Yep,
and how we try to express this processing
yep,
of things that's going to happen. I think it really tells about us as
yep.
humans because we're just imperfect. So my next question again to take off the seriousness will be which of your good characters do you think could turn into a villain and why?
So I be careful of spoilers a little bit. So with the things we do, we have a raft of, so it's focused on Marcus and his family. And what happens, and this isn't spoilery because this happens right at the start of the story. Marcus finds this collection of tapes. So he adores his parents. He thinks they are fantastic people, but he finds these collection of tapes that shows them doing, to word it diplomatically, very mean things to very nice people. So his view of his parents is flipped overnight. Now, Marcus goes on this story and this journey of almost being forced into similar situations to his parents by a supernatural entity, shall we say, that is forcing his hand. So he's not necessarily doing these things by choice, but he's forcing the hand. A lot of the characters in this novel are morally good, but they make bad choices. So I think that word of villain, kind of depends on interpretation to an extent, doesn't it? Because to an extent, a lot of the characters in this novel could be viewed as villains, especially as the story goes on, because they are not necessarily doing good things regardless of their reasons. I have a couple of other novels planned that I'm working through the kind of planning stage for at the moment, and I'm really enjoying writing that character who could easily be the bad guy in book two or easily be the love interest in book two, depending on that kind of that flow and depending on how the situations go. So it's a cop out answer, but a lot of my characters could easily drift into a villainous arc, I think. Yeah.
No, yes, it's very interesting that you touch about the great characters because there's so much you can do with them, and I think it's become actually popular at the same time.
Agreed.
I will ask you argue,
Yeah.
because yeah, nobody wants to read a perfect good character, but even a perfect character can do bad decisions. Absolutely.
Absolutely, and that's the ultimate moral between the things we do. It's good people can be made to do bad things for the right reasons. If you put family in there and you put family in danger, that's the ultimate name of the story. How far would you go? What are the things you would do to protect your loved ones? And that's the name of the game with it. So again, yeah, you're completely right. Uh,
It's a very
Your
good.
average person can be pushed to do the wrong things for the right reasons. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think what happens as well is with the world we're living as well. We make
yeah,
us question, and
yeah.
we don't really know if we might do the right well, the right thing. I will argue because it's very
It's
situational.
subjective. Yeah,
Because
absolutely. Yeah.
we can always just say, "Oh, I'll do this," but then if an extreme situation comes up, Ta-da! Reality check.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep, for sure.
So, one last question for this is: if you could meet your characters, what will you say to them?
So I'm going to use Marcus, who's the main character for the things we do. My message to him would be to talk. So one of the things that I really delved into in the things we do is the way that men, especially, are not very good at being open and are not very good at discussing their feelings and what they're going through. I gave Marcus a picture perfect wife. So his wife is called Violet. She's heavily based on my wife, so I think she's perfect, obviously. But she is someone who would, without a doubt, have helped him in these situations had he opened up to her. But he didn't want to put her in those situations. So we end up in this catch scenario where he is unwilling to discuss what he's going through, but he has someone next to him who would love to help and be involved. But I think men's mental health is one of those things where most of us are pretty terrible at talking. So I think that would be my message across the board. Try and talk where you can. When you're going through something serious, when you're going through something that's impacting you, talk to those around you, talk to your loved ones.
And with that beautiful message about opening up, especially for men in this case, we're going to just do a little pause. And please, Josh, introduce your third song.
No problem. So my third song is actually a score from a film. So this is the Corn Chase by Hans Zimmer, which is part of the movie Interstellar. The reason I picked this one is my wife and I watched this in the cinema when it first came out, so a long, long time ago. And we fell in love with the name Murphy as part of the film. And we said from that point on, our daughter was going to be called Murphy when we eventually had children. And she is. We had a daughter born 2.5 years ago who we called Murphy purely because of this film. So it's a song and a score that really means a lot to us.
Mhm. That was a very beautiful, beautiful song. I never heard of the movie, to be fair, but
Highly
I felt
recommend
the
it. Yep.
emotion and I felt the absolute, just beautiful. I don't have literally no words to describe it. It was just beautiful, beautiful.
Very good
And
film. Yep.
sometimes, pardon me, a song it's better without any voice.
Agreed. Yeah, Interstellar, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is the story about at the end of the world, effectively. Global warming has started to run its course. America is kind of unfarmable. There are big dust storms, etc. And it's about the story of a dad who goes into space and has to leave his family behind. Obviously, he thinks he's doing it for the right reasons to try and save them, but it's a Christopher Nolan film, so he only does great films anyway. But I would highly, highly recommend it for anyone who hasn't watched it. Yep.
There you go, guys. Now, let me just ask, why horror and not other genres?
So I've dabbled in other genres, but I
Oh,
realized after a while that horror and what I touched on earlier, writing about trauma and emotion is where I think my writing kind of comes alive. So I've dabbled in fantasy. I wrote a kind of teen fantasy novel, all based around the Tooth Fairy, which sounds funny when you think about it, but it was based around the old mythology of the Tooth Fairy, where if witches collected teeth, they could control people with them. So I did a kind of a dark twist on that, but the world building of fantasy wasn't something I enjoyed as much as you need to write that kind of thing. So but I realized after a while, every story I've written, there has always been a deep emotion attached to it, and there has always been a lot of kind of trauma and horror type elements attached to it. So the more I started to realize that, and the more I reflected on my own writing, the more I realized actually this is what I enjoy, this is what I naturally lean towards, this is what I should do. But I think that's a great lesson for writers in general. Whilst you don't want to pigeonhole yourself, you need to write bad books or books that don't go anywhere to get to know yourself as a writer and to get to know what you're good at. So it was a time well spent, even if they were books that didn't go anywhere.
Funny enough, when you touch on the bad books, writing bad books, I remember, I think was Alan Moore, I think you can call him. He's the
Yep.
famous author from V Vendetta.
Yeah, Watchmen. Yep. Really big
Yes.
fan of Alan Moore.
He
Yep.
says one of his videos that I've watched, he urges to read bad books.
Yes. Yeah. And to see what works and what doesn't work. And it's absolutely it's great. You need to know as a writer, again, if you're trying to publish, you need to know markets, you need to be able to write to market. In the same vein as you can't write chapters that are 100 pages long, for instance, when the standard is, in that kind of 10 plus, because people will effectively fall asleep mid-chapter, they'll lose their play. It's all those little things that you need to get to know, structure, storytelling, sentences, all of that. Absolutely agree.
So now, let me just ask you, what is the significant way your book has changed since the first draft?
Yes. So when we haven't actually spoke about too much at the moment, so my current novel, the novel that I'm writing at the moment, is a middle grade spooky series. I wanted to write something for my daughter for her to be able to read as she's growing up. So it doesn't have a full title at the moment, but I'm calling it the Imagination Club. So it's about these group of children who meet a kind of magical librarian who sucks them into an imagination world based on a word game that they play. It's kind of a spooky school setting. The school bully is a vampire. The teachers are all really kind of inverses of themselves. They're just not nice. Kind of you think back to school and how dramatic and overpowering everything feels. It's that. But the first version of it, the story actually took place on a train because one of the main characters is really fascinated by trains. He lost his dad, who was a train conductor, so he has a real attachment to trains. And I realized, as great as the emotional attachment of it was, it didn't work as a setting because there's only so many places you can go within a train. There's only so many carriages you can go through within a train. So I changed it to school as a setting instead and had to completely rewrite the story. And I haven't actually finished the rewrite yet. I'm kind of close to the end. So that was one of the biggest rewrites I've done when you completely change the setting and also change one of the main characters' emotional connection to the setting because I still wanted to keep that element of it. And it was a complete rewrite. So it was effectively ripping up version one and coming into version two and writing it fresh. So that's something I'm actively doing at the moment. And whilst it's beneficial, when you realize I need to rip this up and start again, it's a painful feeling because you think of all the hours you've put into it. But again, worth it in the end,
It's a process of writing.
for sure.
Sometimes I can say as well, pardon me, on my dark fantasy at the moment I am writing, I have the book, the first book at least, because it's going to be a series done.
Yep.
But I just realized, this is a bit of lore. This can do better. So I'm writing the lore, but I'm
Yep.
also touching the stuff that goes along. So I think this is fascinating how we all work on our own
Yep.
way to just make things better.
Yep.
Because we realize, yes, this can be something
Yep.
that those who are going to enjoy is going just to devour the content, so to speak.
I agree. I think when you're writing something with the intention of putting it out into the world, you need to be able to look at it both as an author and as a reader. So as an author, you are going to be attached to it from word one because it's your story, it's your baby, right? But you need to look at it from a reader's perspective and think, yes, this is good, but with this, make it better. And even if, as I've done, it means rewriting it from start to finish, if the end product is better, I think you need that element of self-reflection. You need to be able to step back from the story and think, I love it, but I think it's a key skill that you again I only developed as I'm on my fifth or sixth novel, so it takes time.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yes. So, can you just say how much research did you need to do for your book?
Yeah, so quite a bit, mostly around. So if I think about the things we do, a lot of the research I did was around grief, the way that trauma impacts us, the way that it can kind of manifest. One of the things I looked into heavily was something called bereavement hallucinations. So that is the kind of, how do we word it? The process of, sometimes you will see something and instantly connect it to your loved one. So let's say, I don't know, your loved one who you've lost always wore red t-shirts, and then you go shopping and everyone is wearing red t-shirts. It's not necessarily that people are wearing more red t-shirts than normal. It's that your brain is connecting to those t-shirts, if that makes sense. So one of the things I had to do with Marcus, my main character, was he tries to justify a lot of the bad things that he's seeing as his brain misconstruing or connecting the dots or hallucinating these things. So I had to do a lot of digging into that. I had to stretch it a bit as well because there are some kind of demonic things that Marcus is seeing that you wouldn't typically expect from those kind of, that way of manifesting grief. But I had to do a lot of deep diving into grief. One of the things I do when I first start writing a character, and I forgot to mention this earlier, is I interview them. So what I mean by that is I have a list of questions that I have, and I will ask each character the same questions, mostly to get their voice right. So to get how would character A respond to this? How would character B respond to this? If character A is deep in the grieving process, how would they respond to it versus 6 months later, that kind of thing. So I had to do a lot of homework for getting his voice right days after grief, 6 months after grief, that kind of thing. So quite a bit of research. Yep.
I just want to say, because you touched on you have to research of grief and the stages. When I was writing specifically, because I started as a fanfic writer, because
Yep.
some writers start from
Yep.
there.
A lot do.
I
Yep.
was writing on the Spider-Man fanfic, right, specifically of Andrew Garfield's movie.
Yep.
And because yeah, his character really touches about of grief,
For
loss,
sure.
and I think the other issues with him is, at least my opinion, of course, people can have different opinions about that. But and I just discovered, as you said, that people have these hallucinations
Yep.
because the emotion is so intense
Yes.
that they start hallucinating. And I remember writing him with a panic attack
Yep.
while hearing the voices of the characters, or because it was dumb. That I was trying to make it to intensity, because
Yes.
when you love somebody and you lose somebody, you just
Yep.
start. Yeah, it's part of the process.
It's all consuming, yeah. And you'll note, I didn't intend for this to be a thing, but grief has become a big part of my storytelling. So until we meet, obviously, the short story that I had published is all focused around grief. One of the next novels that I have planned, again, is all focused around grief. And the ironic thing is, I haven't lost that many close family members. So it's not something I've actively gone through, but it's a theme that I resonate with. It's something I enjoy writing about, mostly in the sense of trying to build those characters through it as well. So taking them from their darkest moments, trying to bring them back into something more positive. So yeah, it's become something I've spent a lot of time reading about, watching, researching. Yep.
So now, my first question before we start to tell the listeners about our writer's journey, at least at the moment, my last question will be: what book or books are you currently reading?
Good question. So as part of my time on TikTok, so we mentioned earlier, I've been posting about my writing, my reading. Something I've been doing a lot more of recently is actually reading indie authors. So authors who haven't gone through the agency process but have gone through and just published it themselves. So there's a book I'm reading at the moment called Blood on the Boardwalk. This is by Donna Taylor. This is a really interesting take on vampires. So it's around a teenage girl who can kind of see the other world, and where she lives, she starts to see these deaths and all these kind of vampiric things that you would expect from a vampire novel popping up. But she has the added twist of people think she's a bit weird from where she's kind of seeing ghosts and things. So they don't take her serious when she starts to kind of voice that these bad things are happening. So it's an indie novel, but it's really, really well written. The novel that I finished just before that is called Before and After. This is one of the most unique books I've ever read. It's by an author called Andrew Shanahan. It's a horror novel again, but more from the side of trauma. So it's about a main character called Ben, who is severely overweight. He has diabetes. He needs to have his leg amputated because of his diabetes. The front of his flat is taken off, so the bricks are taken down one by one. He is about to be craned out of the building, and then the world ends. So he is attached to a gurney. He is tied down. This is someone who physically is incapable of looking after themselves,
Mm.
and he is thrown into this situation of having to survive, but also try to want to live. This is someone who was kind of given up, and he has to get himself back on track. A truly, truly fantastic novel. I have a couple more favorites that I'll highlight. This one is completely different to what I would normally read. So I'm a big fan of the Old Man War series by John Scalzi. It's a science fiction series, so not my typical read, but it's based in a world where we have found other alien species in the galaxy and humanity doing what humanity does best. We start fights with half of them because that's just what we do. We can't live happily ever after. And they have found this technology to effectively clone the human body. So what they do is they take the elderly, so people in their 70s and 80s, and they are the army. So the elderly generation, they go up into space and they are given these cloned bodies. So you imagine your body when you're in your 20s, but your mind is a 70, 80-year-old and kind of with effectively with superpowers. They're stronger, they're faster, that sort of thing. And it's a really great take on war and how negative of a thing it is, but also of the elderly being given a second chance at life. These are people who are given fresh, muscular bodies again to go out there and defend their planet. And it's just a really, really fantastic take on war, on people, on humanity. The main character in it is a lot like Ronnie, the character from Until We Meet. He's lost his wife. He is at the end of his wits, effectively. So he agrees to go off to war just to get away for something to do. And then the final one, because I could talk about books all day. So we talked a lot about Stephen King at the start. It by Stephen King is one of my favorite novels of all time, as it is for a lot of horror writers. But I think his Mr. Mercedes series is probably his most underrated trilogy, at least initially a trilogy of books. So it's about a private detective who doesn't solve the big case that kind of sets his career. So the serial killer gets away. And he is then, after he's retired, he is then contacted by this serial killer out of the blue, kind of reigniting the cat and chase side of things. And it's really interesting. So obviously Stephen King typically is associated with pure horror. So having something where it's, whilst there are still a lot of horror elements, it's that cat and mouse detective police procedural kind of novel, done very well. And again, a series of novels that I really, really enjoy.
That's very interesting. The books you just told so far. I don't know none of them.
Yeah.
And I have some books on my shelf as well of horror. I'm mostly, I think, more drawn to the gothic horror, the
Yes.
the cosmic as well, cosmic
Yep.
horror as well. And I will say, what I like as well in horror is most likely the psychological, because
Yes.
we could go to the trauma as well, which
Yeah.
was what fascinated me. So thank you so much to tell
Thank you.
the books that you're reading. Now, just let's discuss a little bit. How do you feel right now as a writer? Because you're going to transition to the to have
Yep.
your book. How do you feel as a writer right now? Are you able to describe your progress right now as a writer?
Yeah, so I'm in a probably unique situation where I'm the most confident I've ever felt in my writing. I believe in myself as a writer more than I ever have. I'm more confident in my skills as a writer than ever. But equally, that doesn't matter to an extent because when you're going out to market, when you're going to agents, ultimately regardless of how good you think your book is up to someone else's interpretation of how good they think that book is. So I'm feeling very confident in myself, but also very not confident because from tomorrow, when I start sending emails, it's out of my hands at that point. I have done all the work I can on the book. It is now up to someone else to see the story in it that I see. So confident but unconfident. The market is an interesting thing in books in general. I think there are a lot of we're seeing a lot more people push towards indie publishing, which is something I love. Obviously, I just mentioned I read a lot of indie authors, but I think that's happening more because more and more people are feeling disillusioned with the traditionally published process. Because again, you're writing to market, you're not necessarily writing the stories you want to write sometimes. I think there are conversations to be had around AI and how much that is starting to encroach in writing. I watch a lot of YouTube documentaries about writing because, as you'll know, when this is your hobby, you live it to an extent, right? A lot of what I watch will be reading and writing related, and vice versa. And people think there are some books that are creeping out there that are maybe written by AI or have been heavily edited by AI. So that's a big thing. So it's a really interesting place, I think, publishing at the moment, where there's more books out there than ever, but it also feels more restricted than ever because, again, there are only so many people you can approach, and you are relying on those people saying yes or no. It's an interesting time, I think, to start querying for sure.
Yes, and what I've noticed as well is one of my comments I received, I think mostly on my first show, was a little bit after that because I actually started my show talking about fan fiction and its importance because there is importance
Yeah,
on the pop culture. If you think about it, has importance. It can be also a good way for you to train your writing as a
for
storyteller.
sure.
It
Yeah,
could be a
for sure.
start.
Yeah,
And one of the comments I have, if I can remember now, right, I completely forgot. Oh God. Well, anyway, but yeah, I have to agree that right now is an interesting time, but also very,
yeah,
very restrictive. Absolutely, because we are on this, or the AI is going to take over, but we
yep.
should not allow that because there's just
Agreed.
absolutely no, no,
Yep,
no. Because what these companies want, I want that stuff for free, but
yep,
not by you,
for
and then
sure.
what comes after.
Yep, yep,
And I think that's such absolutely wrong because
yep.
creative work cannot even be done by machines.
It's like we said at the start. When you think about publishing, we have to remember ultimately it's a business. As much as a lot of these people probably get into it for the right reasons, they are there to make money. AI is one of those things that unfortunately will be seen as a way to make shortcuts to make money. I think the way that we as readers and authors especially can try and stop that from happening is it's hard to prove. So we need to caveat that. I don't want to say this author uses AI or this author because you don't ultimately we don't know. But there are books, like I said, in some of these deep dives, and I forget the name of them now, where the author doesn't have a public persona, they don't have an online presence, etc., which in this modern world is very difficult to do. It's very difficult to do anything creative without some sort of online presence. So that kind of reads red flag. And we all know, again, if you watch these videos, there are a lot of tells of AI in writing, the kind of rule of three that it does with descriptors, what will say this, this, this. It batches things together really similarly. So I'm always wary of being like, that person's used AI or that person's, because you see it with the end dash. People think the end dash is a key way of knowing, but that's been part of grammar for generations at this point. So it's really not that simple. But we we as creators need to stay away from it as much as possible, and we need to be vocal when it comes to publishing that we don't want it in our books as much as possible. It's a tough thing to be involved in.
Yes, and I think maybe this why when the indie authors come, I think as well, just to say, hey, I don't agree with this, I might just do my own
Yeah,
my way. I interviewed Terry Kito, my first author I interviewed, and he told me about the pros and cons of indie publishing. And yes, in certain extent, you have freedom, but then you have to
yeah,
do everything yourself,
absolutely.
and it can become very costly. And I imagine
Yeah,
how much you have to pay, even for an editor to help you because it has this.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, and we should definitely give Terry a shout out. I love Terry. So I recently finished reading The Frequency, Terry's first book in his quintet, and it's a fantastic book. I would highly recommend it to anyone. But he's right. So Terry and I spoke quite a lot in regards to indie publishing or traditional publishing, and you're right. Terry does everything. So he has designed his book covers, he's done the formatting, he's doing all of the marketing for it. He's ordering these books in lump sums and then posting them out to people. And when that goes well, that's brilliant because then all of the money's coming back to you and all of the praise is coming back to you. But there's a lot of work. Whereas if you go down the traditionally publishing route, you're definitely not getting anywhere near as much of the money because there's a lot of different people taking cuts of it. Other people have a say in your books at that point. So your creative vision can be lost a little bit more. But you also have people who are managing, getting you to events. You have people who are managing getting the books out. So you are absolutely right. There are pros and cons to both sides for sure.
So I just remember for those who want to follow you, could you just tell when people can just count you on social media when
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
talk?
So I predominantly post on TikTok, predominantly talking about the books that I'm reading and what I'm writing. So my name on there is just Josh Rice, author. So very simple, just my name and author. So that's the easiest place to come and follow me. I keep meaning to start an Instagram or a kind of newsletter, but time keeps escaping me. So for now, TikTok's the place to come and find me. Thank you.
All right, then, no problem. So I just want to say thank you so much, Josh, for coming to my interview. It was really a pleasure to have you in and have your
Thank you.
discussions as well as another writer. I just found another writer. So it's really good to in touch with other people that write and be creative. And my show on Dreamcatcher Radio is just to help other writers out there
Great.
and bring their positivity back. Say, no, I can do this. I'm capable
Yep.
of doing this.
Absolutely.
And even when I touch on the specific things of writing, so for example, I just finished on the point of view, its importance, and touch the other points of view. And then after that, I also touch on settings. So this kind of things helps.
Yep.
And just to hear that someone says, hey, I'm writing an autobiography. You give me some ideas. That's great.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yep. Yep.
So now, can you just please introduce your last song, please?
Absolutely. So my last song, I apologize in advance because it is a long one. I am a big fan of the artist Ren, who a lot of people are starting to get to know, but is criminally underrated. So this final song is Hi Ren by the author Ren.
Okay, so before we start to playing, I'm just gonna say that the entire Dreamcatcher Radio, we're all big fans of the Ren. However, we're gonna say that this last song has some offensive words. So if someone is listening, have minors, please be mindful, be aware of that. However, we like it because it tells an authentic story, and I think that this artist deserves to be out there. So just a disclaimer before playing. That's all.
Hi there, Ran. It's been a little while. Did you miss me? You thought you buried me, didn't you? Risky. Cause I always come back. Deep down, you know that. Deep down, you know I'm always in periphery. Ran, on your pleased to see me. It's been weeks since we spoke, bro. I know you need me. You're the sheep, I'm the shepherd. Not your place to lead me. Not your place to be biting off the hand that feeds me. Hi, Ran. I've been taking some time to be distant. I've been taking some time to be still. I've been taking some time to be by myself since my therapist told me I'm ill. And I've been making some progress lately. And I've learned some new coping skills. So I haven't really needed you much, man. I think we need to just step back and chill. Ren, you sound more insane than I do. You think that those doctors are really there to guide you? Been through this a million times. Your civilian mind is so perfect, they're always being lied to. Okay, take another pill, boy. Drown yourself in the sound of white noise. Follow this 10-step program, rejoice. All your problems will be gone. Fucking dumb boy. Nah, mate. This time is different, man. Trust me. I feel like things might be falling in place. And my music's been kinda doing bits too. Like I actually might do something great. And when I'm gone, maybe I'll be remembered for doing something special with myself. That's why I don't think that we should talk, man. Cause when you're with me, it never seems to help. You think that you can amputate me? I am you, you are me, you are I am we are one. Split in two, that makes one, so you see. You gotta kill you if you wanna kill me. I'm not leftover dinner, I'm not scraps on the side. Oh, your music is thriving, delusional guy. Where's your top 10 hit? Where's your interview with Oprah? Wow, your Grammys ran nowhere. Yeah, but my music's not commercial like that. I never chase numbers, statistics or stats. I never write hooks for the radio, they never even play me, so why would I concern myself with that? But my music is really connecting, and the people who find it respect it. And for me that's enough, cause this life's been tough, so it gives me a purpose I can rest in. Man, you sound so pretentious. Ran, your music is so self-centered. No one wants to hear another song about how much you hate yourself. Trust me. You should be so lucky, having me inside you to guide you, remind you to manage expectations, provide you perspective. That thing you neglected, I get it. You wanna be a big deal, next Jimi Hendrix, forget it. Man, it's not like that. Man, it's just like that. I'm inside you, you twat. No, it's not, man, you're wrong. When I write, I belong. Let me break the fourth wall by acknowledging this song. Ren sits down, has a stroke of genius. He wants to write a song that was not done previous. A battle with the subconscious. Eminem did it. Played on guitar. Plan B did it. Man, you're not original, you criminal rip-off artist. The pinnacle of your success is stealing other people's material. Ren, mate, we've heard it all before. She sells seashells on the seashore. Fuck you, I don't need you, I don't need to hear this. Cause I'm fine by myself, I'm a genius. And I will be great, and I will make waves. And I'll shake up the whole world beneath us. That's right, speak your truth, your fucking god complex leaks out of you. It's refreshing to actually hear you say it instead of downplay it. Music is all about the creative process, and if people can find something to relate to within that, then that's just a bonus. Fuck you, I'ma fucking kill you, Ren. Well, fucking kill me then, let's fucking have you, Ren. I'ma do it, watch me prove it. Who are you to down my music? Cause I call the shots, I choose if you die. Yeah, I call the shots and so I choose who survives. I'll tie you up in knots when I lock you inside. Newsflash, I was created at the dawn of creation. I am temptation. I am the snake in Eden. I am the reason for treason, beheading all kings. I am sin, with no rhyme or reason. Son of the morning, Lucifer, Antichrist, father of lies. Mephistopheles, truth in a blender, deceitful pretender, the banished avenger, the righteous surrender. When standing in front of my solar eclipse, my name is stitched to your lips. So you see, I won't bow to the will of a mortal. Feeble and normal, you wanna kill me? I'm eternal immortal. I live in every decision that catalyzes chaos, that causes division. I live inside death, the beginning of ends. I am you, you are me, I am you, friend. Hi, Ren. I've been taking some time to be distant. I've been taking some time to be still. I've been taking some time to be by myself, and I've spent half my life ill. But just as sure as the tide starts turning, just as sure as the night has dawned, just as sure as the rainfall soon runs dry when you stand in an eye of a storm. I was made to be tested and twisted. I was made to be broken and beat. I was made by his hand, it's all part of his plan that I stand on my own 2 feet. And you know me, my will is eternal. And you know me, you've met me before. Face to face with a beast, I will rise from the east and I'll settle on the ocean floor. And I go by many names also. Some people know me as hope. Some people know me as the voice that you hear when you loosen the noose on the rope. And you know how I know that I'll prosper? Cause I stand here beside you today. I have stood in the flames that cremated my brain, and I didn't once flinch or shake. So cower at the man I've become when I sing from the top of my lungs. That I won't retire, I'll stand in your fire, inspired by me to be strong. And when I am gone, I will rise in the music that I left behind. Ferocious, persistent, immortal like you, irrecognizant, different side. When I was 17 years old, I shouted out into an empty room, into a blank canvas, that I would defeat the forces of evil. And for the next 10 years of my life, I suffered the consequences, with autoimmunity, illness, and psychosis. As I got older, I realized there were no real winners and there were no real losers in psychological warfare, but there were victims and there were students. It wasn't David versus Goliath. It was a pendulum, eternally swaying from the dark to the light. And the more intensely that the light shone, the darker the shadow it cast. It was never really a battle for me to win. It was an eternal dance. And like a dance, the more rigid I became, the harder it got. The more I cursed my clumsy footsteps, the more I struggled. So I got older, and I learned to relax. And I learned to soften, and that dance got easier. It is this eternal dance that separates human beings from angels, from demons, from gods. And I must not forget, we must not forget, that we are human beings.